When the door opened with trembling hands, Alexandra opened the door, only to find Keanu standing there. Rain poured behind him, his black coat soaked, his hair damp, and his eyes gentle, quiet, full of something deeper than words. She froze, unable to speak. It had been months since she had last seen him, months since their last painful argument, and yet here he was, standing on her doorstep in the middle of the night like a memory that refused to fade. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered finally, her voice fragile, but firm. Keanu didn't move. He simply looked at her, the faint sound of thunder filling the silence between them. "I know," he said softly, "but I had to come." She looked away, her heart racing. The apartment behind her was dark, filled with unfinished paintings and silence. She had spent weeks trying to heal, trying to forget the man who had once been her calm in a storm. Yet now, standing so close to him again, every piece of that calm came flooding back. "You left," she said, her voice shaking. "You walked away when I needed you most." He lowered his eyes, guilt flickering across his face. "I thought it was the right thing to do. I didn't want my chaos to touch you." Her hands clenched at her sides. "You don't get to decide what I can handle, Keanu." The sound of rain grew louder. A flash of lightning lit up the hall, illuminating his tired face. He looked older, sadder, as if carrying the weight of too many regrets. "You're right," he said finally. "I don't get to decide that. But I couldn't stay away anymore. Not after what happened." Her chest tightened. "What happened?" He hesitated, glancing behind him, as if unsure how to begin. "Someone's been following you." The air seemed to vanish. "What?" 2 weeks ago, a man tried to contact my assistant," Keanu continued. "He claimed to have photos of you, of your studio, your private life. He said he'd release them if I didn't pay." Alexandra stepped back, gripping the door frame. "That's insane." "Why me?" "Because you're connected to me," he said quietly, "and they know hurting you would hurt me more." She felt her throat close. For months she had ignored the strange calls, the shadows she sometimes thought she saw near her apartment. She had told herself it was her imagination. Now, hearing this, she realized it wasn't. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, panic rising in her voice. "If they're watching me, they'll find you too. Let them," Keanu said. "I'm not leaving you again. Not when I could stop this." She shook her head. "You can't protect me from everything." "Maybe not," he said, stepping closer. "But I can stand beside you this time. I owe you that much." For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the rain and the steady rhythm of their breathing. Then, finally, she opened the door wider. "Come in," she said quietly. He stepped inside, dripping water onto the floor, and she shut the door behind him. It felt strange, familiar, yet distant, like time had folded itself back. He looked around the apartment, at the canvases leaning against the walls, at the brushes scattered across the table. "You're still painting," he said softly. She nodded. "It's the only thing that makes sense anymore." He smiled faintly. "It always has." For a moment, she almost smiled too. But then she remembered the fear, the uncertainty, the shadow of the threat that now loomed over them. "Keanu," she said softly, "who's doing this? Who would go this far?" His expression darkened. "I don't know yet, but whoever it is, they've been close for a while." To close, she felt her heart sink. "You think they've been here?" He met her gaze. "I don't think. I know." A silence heavier than the storm fell over the room. Alexandra felt her hands shake again, but this time not from emotion, from fear. "What do we do now?" she whispered. He stepped closer, his voice steady and calm. "We stay together. We find out who's behind this, and we end it before it destroys us both." She looked up at him, her eyes glistening with tears. "You make it sound easy. It won't be," he said quietly. "But we've both survived worse." A soft flash of lightning filled the room again, casting their shadows across the walls to broken souls standing together against something they didn't yet understand. For the first time in months, Alexandra didn't feel alone, even with danger outside and fear clawing at her heart. Keanu's presence brought something she had forgotten how to feel. Hope. And somewhere deep down, she knew this was only the beginning, because the person watching them from the dark had just realized their plan was about to fail. When the shadows moved closer, storm outside finally calmed. But inside Alexandra's heart, the fear only grew louder. She hadn't slept all night. Every sound, every creak, every whisper of wind felt like a warning. Keanu sat across from her at the small kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee gone cold. "You haven't said a word in an hour," she whispered. He looked up, his eyes calm but heavy. I'm thinking about who would do this. Someone who knows you well. Someone who knows your schedule, your habits, where you live. She shivered. You think it's someone I know. Maybe, he said quietly. Whoever's doing this has access to private things. That's not random. Alexandra rubbed her temples. It's so strange. Lately I've been feeling watched. I thought it was my imagination. A few days ago, I found my studio window slightly open even though I never touched it. I convinced myself it was nothing. It wasn't nothing, Keanu said softly. Someone's been testing boundaries, seeing how close they can get before you notice. She looked at him, fear flickering in her eyes. What if they come back? He leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. They already came back, but this time, I'm here. For a while, they sat in silence. The air between them carried both comfort and tension, like the old souls reunited by danger, trying to find trust again through broken pieces. As the morning light slipped through the blinds, Keanu stood and looked around the apartment. His sharp eyes studied the corners, the locks, the windows. I'll call Marcus, he said suddenly. He's a friend, security expert. He can check for hidden devices, cameras, anything. Alexandra nodded slowly. You really think it's that serious? He turned back to her, his face unreadable. Yes. An hour later, Marcus arrived, tall, quiet, focused. He brought a small black case of tools and a calm energy that eased Alexandra's nerves. Within minutes, he began scanning the apartment. Then he stopped, near the window where Alexandra painted every day. He found it, a small device tucked inside the curtain lining. A hidden camera. Alexandra froze. Oh my God, she whispered, her voice breaking. They were watching me. Marcus looked grim. And recording, most likely. This is high-end tech. Whoever did this knows what they're doing. Keanu's hands clenched into fists. Can you trace it? Already trying, Marcus said, connecting the device to his tablet. After a few tense minutes, he looked up, signals bouncing through multiple servers, but the source started right here in the city. Someone nearby. Alexandra's knees weakened, and she sat down. So this person isn't just online. They're close. Keanu crouched beside her. Hey, he said softly, look at me. She met his eyes. We'll get through this, he said. They want you scared. Don't give them that. Her lip trembled, but she nodded. You sound so sure, because I've seen fear destroy people, he said, and I've seen courage rebuild them. You're stronger than you think. For the first time that morning, she let out a shaky laugh. You still talk like a movie hero. He smiled faintly. Only when I mean it. By the afternoon, Marcus packed up his tools. I'll monitor their servers, he said. If they make a move, we'll know. When he left, the apartment felt quiet again. Alexandra stood by her easel, staring at the camera's old hiding place. I can't believe someone was in here, she whispered. Keanu stepped beside her. They wanted you to feel powerless. But you're not powerless anymore. She looked up at him. You came back into my life at the exact moment this started. Do you ever think that maybe you weren't just trying to protect me? Maybe fate was. He smiled softly. I don't know about fate, but I know some things are too important to walk away from twice. Just as she was about to respond, her phone buzzed with a message. The sender was unknown again. Did you like the surprise I left by the window? Alexandra's breath caught. She showed Keanu. His calm expression hardened instantly. They're taunting you now, he said quietly. What do they want? She whispered. He studied the message, his jaw tightening. To see how far they can push before you break. She shook her head. They won't get that satisfaction. He nodded approvingly. Good. That's the spirit I remember. But deep down, he knew it was far from over. Whoever was behind this wasn't just playing a game. They were building up to something bigger. That night, as Alexandra finally tried to rest, Keanu stayed awake, watching over her from the sofa. His phone glowed faintly in the dark. A new message from Marcus. Trace complete. The signal leads to a name you might recognize. Someone from Alexandra's past. Keanu stared at the screen, his heartbeat slowing, his mind racing. He whispered into the quiet room, no, it can't be. And as Alexandra slept peacefully for the first time in days, the truth that awaited them would shatter everything they thought they knew. When the past returned the next morning arrived quiet. The storm had passed, but the air still felt heavy, as if the world was holding its breath. Alexandra woke to the smell of coffee and the soft sound of pages turning. Keanu was sitting by the window, reading one of her old sketchbooks. You still draw faces, he said softly without looking up. But they all look sad now. She smiled weakly. Sadness stays longer than happiness, she said. It's easier to remember. He closed the book gently and turned toward her. Maybe, but you keep painting light in every one of them. You don't even realize it. She looked down, brushing her hair aside. Light doesn't mean hope. Sometimes it's just a reminder of what's missing. Before he could reply, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Marcus. Just one line. We need to talk. It's someone she knows. Emily Hart. Keanu's stomach sank. Emily Hart. The name hit him like a ghost. She had been Alexandra's closest friend for years, a fellow artist, the one who had introduced her to most of her clients and sponsors. They had once been inseparable until jealousy crept in, quiet and poisonous. He looked at Alexandra. Alex, do you remember Emily? Her eyes softened. Of course. We worked together for years. Until we didn't. What happened? She hesitated, folding her hands in her lap. We were supposed to share an exhibition 2 years ago. She found out my work was chosen for the main gallery, not hers. She stopped talking to me after that. I thought time would heal it, but she vanished. Why? Keanu exhaled slowly. Marcus traced the camera signal and the messages back to her. Alexandra froze. No, that can't be true. I wish it wasn't, he said quietly. But the proof is solid. The account that sent the blackmail threats, it's registered under her name. She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. She wouldn't do that. She's not cruel. Jealousy changes people, Alexandra, he said softly, especially when they think the world forgot them. She stood up, pacing the room. Then we talked to her. Maybe there's more to it. Maybe she's being used. You're still defending her? Keanu asked gently, because once she was my friend, Alexandra said, and friendship deserves the truth before judgment. He nodded slowly. Then let's find her. That evening, Marcus sent an address, an old art warehouse downtown where Emily had been renting space. When they arrived, the building stood half-lit, the faint hum of music drifting from inside. The air smelled of paint and turpentine. They walked through the empty corridor, footsteps echoing. Alexandra's heart pounded with every step. Finally, they reached the door slightly ajar. She pushed it open. Inside, canvases covered the walls, beautiful, haunting, chaotic. And in the middle of the room sat Emily, painting furiously, her eyes red and tired. Emily, Alexandra said softly. Emily froze. The brush fell from her hand. She turned slowly, her face pale, her expression unreadable. You shouldn't be here. We need to talk, Alexandra said. About the messages, the camera, the photos. Emily laughed quietly, a broken sound. So it finally caught up to me. Keanu stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. Why are you doing this, Emily? She looked at him, her voice trembling. Because she took everything from me. Alexandra's voice cracked. I never took anything. We were supposed to share that gallery. I begged them to include you, and they said no. Emily snapped. They said you were more marketable. They said your connection to him, she pointed at Keanu, would bring attention. I worked for years, Alex years. And you got everything because you were the quiet one everyone wanted to protect. Alexandra's hands shook. So you decided to destroy me? Emily looked down. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It started as a warning. But then people believed it. And I kept feeding it because it made me feel powerful for once. Silence filled the room. Keanu's expression softened slightly, though his eyes stayed cautious. You could have talked to her, he said. Instead, you became the same cruelty you hated. Emily's lip trembled. You think I don't know that? I see her face every night in my head. I hate what I became. Alexandra stepped closer. Then stop, Emily. End it. Tell the truth. Make this right before it destroys both of us. For a moment, Emily hesitated. Then she walked to her desk, picked up a small hard drive, and handed it to Alexandra. Everything's on here. The emails, the fake messages, the footage. If you give it to the police, it's over. Why give it now? Alexandra asked softly, because Emily said with a broken smile, I saw the video of him standing by you. I realized no lie I could make would ever break something that real. Tears filled Alexandra's eyes. I forgive you, she whispered. Emily's single quotes as face crumbled. Don't. I don't deserve it. It's not for you, Alexandra said gently. It's for me. I'm done carrying hate. When they left the warehouse, rain began to fall again, light and cleansing. Alexandra held the hard drive in her hand as if it were a fragile piece of her past. Keanu glanced at her. You okay? She nodded slowly. For the first time in a long time, yes, but as they walked away, neither of them noticed the figure watching from across the street, a man in a dark coat, phone in hand, taking photos of them together. Emily's single quotes as confession might have ended one war, but another had just begun, and this one was far from personal. Asterisk, when danger found them again following morning. The sky was clear, but neither Alexandra nor Keanu felt peace. Emily's confession had ended the lies, yet something in the air still felt wrong, like a silence before another storm. Alexandra sat by the window, watching the sunlight touch the edges of her unfinished painting. Her fingers trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. Keanu walked in quietly, carrying 2 mugs of tea. You didn't sleep again, he said softly. I couldn't, she admitted. I keep thinking about Emily, about how close I came to losing everything because of jealousy. He sat across from her, his tone calm but firm. You didn't lose, you survived, and you forgave her. That takes more strength than hate ever will. Alexandra smiled faintly, but her eyes looked distant. Do you really believe forgiveness changes anything? It changes you, he said. And that's enough. Just as he said it, his phone buzzed. It was Marcus. Keanu answered quickly. What's wrong? Marcus's voice was tense. You need to leave the apartment right now. Keanu frowned. Why? Because whoever was helping Emily wasn't working alone, Marcus said. I found traces of another signal. Someone's still watching you. And this one's not just about gossip or blackmail. This is serious. Keanu's heart tightened. How close? Marcus hesitated. Too close. The device I found last week wasn't the only one. Another was placed in your car. The same tracker used by private contractors. I think someone's being paid to follow you both. Keanu stood immediately, his tone calm, but his body tense. We're leaving. Now. Alexandra looked up, confused. What's happening? He didn't answer right away. He just took her hand and said quietly, trust me. Within minutes, they packed a small bag and left the apartment. Keanu drove them through the city, staying alert, checking mirrors every few seconds. Alexandra could feel the tension in his silence. Keanu, she said softly, you're scaring me. He glanced at her. Someone's still watching us. Marcus found another tracker. This isn't over. She turned pale. But Emily said Emily wasn't working alone. He interrupted gently. Someone used her anger to start this. Someone bigger, someone who knows how to hide. They drove until the city disappeared behind them, replaced by long stretches of road and open sky. Finally, Keanu pulled over by a quiet lake surrounded by pine trees. We'll stay here for a while, he said. Marcus will find who's behind it. They stepped out of the car. The air smelled of earth and rain. For a while, they didn't speak. Alexandra stood by the water, her reflection rippling with every small wave. It's strange, she said softly, how peace feels so fragile. One moment you think it's safe, the next it's gone. Keanu walked beside her. Peace isn't a place, he said. It's a choice we keep making, even when the world doesn't let us. She looked at him, a small, grateful smile crossing her lips. You always know what to say, he smiled faintly. Only because I've been broken enough times to learn what words matter. As the sun began to set, they lit a small fire near the lake. Alexandra finally laughed for the first time in days. She told him stories about her first art show, about how nervous she was, about how she dropped a paintbrush right in front of the crowd. Keanu laughed quietly, listening to her voice as if it was the only sound that mattered. But the peace didn't last. In the middle of the night, as the fire faded to embers, Keanu woke to a faint sound, the snap of a twig, the soft crunch of footsteps. He sat up slowly, every sense alert. Outside the cabin, shadows moved. He reached for his phone and texted Marcus immediately. Someone's here. Then he turned to Alexandra, whispering, stay quiet. Don't move. Her eyes widened, fear filling them. What's happening? Before he could answer, a loud bang echoed from outside, the sound of a car door slamming. Headlights flashed across the window. Keanu moved quickly, positioning himself between Alexandra and the door. Stay behind me, he whispered. A man's voice called out from the darkness. KeanuReeves. Keanu's jaw tightened. Who's asking? Someone who wants to make sure you stop digging, the voice replied coldly. Alexandra's heart pounded. Keanu, she whispered, they found us. He stepped forward, his tone calm but sharp. If you wanted to scare me, you picked the wrong person. The man laughed softly. It's not you I'm after. It's her. Keanu's eyes turned hard. Then you'll have to go through me first. A moment of silence followed, thick and dangerous. Then the sound of tires screeched as the car sped away, vanishing into the night. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Alexandra clutched his arm, trembling. Who was that? He looked out into the dark woods, his voice low. Someone who doesn't want the truth to come out. Someone who's afraid of what we might find. She looked up at him, her voice breaking. What truth? He turned back to her, his eyes full of both sadness and determination. The one that started all of this. The person funding Emily. The one who wanted to break you. It's not about jealousy anymore. It's about revenge. Alexandra's breath caught. Revenge for what? Keanu didn't answer. Not yet. He just said quietly, tomorrow, we'll find out. And as the wind rustled through the trees and the moonlight danced on the water, both of them knew. The danger wasn't over. It was only beginning to show its true face. Asterisk when truth began to bleed through the morning came with a gray sky, heavy and tense, as if the world itself held its breath. Alexandra stood by the lake, watching ripples disturb the calm surface. She hadn't slept. The night's encounter replayed in her mind again and again. The strange voice, the headlights, the fear. Keanu stood a few feet away, talking quietly on the phone with Marcus. When he hung up, his face was unreadable. Marcus traced the payment trail from Emily's account. He said, the man who showed up last night isn't random. He works for someone named Daniel Ward. Alexandra frowned. That name, it sounds familiar. Keanu nodded slowly. He was your old gallery manager, wasn't he? Her eyes widened. Yes, he helped me when I first started, but after a few shows, he asked for more control over my work, my contracts, my money. I refused, and he disappeared. I thought that was the end of it. Keanu's voice grew quieter. It wasn't. Daniel lost investors after you cut him out. Your success made them pull away. He blames you for everything he lost. She shook her head in disbelief. He's ruining my life because of business, because of ego, Keanu said softly. People like him don't see others as human, just as tools. When you stop being useful, he decided to destroy you. Alexandra sank onto a wooden bench, her hands trembling. So all this time, the messages, the cameras, the threats, it was him. Keanu nodded. And he's not done. Marcus says he's still in the city, paying people to keep watching you. She closed her eyes. What do we do now? Keanu sat beside her, his voice calm, but firm. We go to him first. Keanu, no. She started, but he stopped her with a gentle look. You've spent months running and hiding. That ends today. Fear doesn't stop danger. It feeds it. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes softening. You're not just here to protect me, are you? He smiled faintly. No, I'm here because I still care. They drove back to the city before sunset. The roads were quiet, the air thick with tension. Alexandra watched the buildings grow taller, her reflection in the window pale and distant. Finally, they stopped in front of a sleek, modern office building, the new headquarters of Daniel Ward's art investment firm. Keanu parked the car and turned to her. Let me talk first, he said. No, she said quietly. When the heart finally found peace, the courtroom lights were harsh. But Alexandra stood tall. The trial of Daniel Frost had drawn reporters, photographers, and critics, all waiting for another headline. Yet for the first time, she didn't fear the cameras. She looked calm, almost serene, her silver hair pulled back neatly, her hands steady as she held her statement. Keanu sat quietly in the back row, his eyes never leaving her. He didn't come for the spectacle. He came because she had once stood alone in front of the world, and he had promised she never would again. When the judge gave her permission to speak, Alexandra took a breath. Her voice was soft but strong. For months, I lived in fear, she began. I feared lies, shadows, and betrayal. I feared losing the pieces of myself I had spent a lifetime building. But today, I don't stand here as a victim. I stand here as someone who learned that peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from truth. The room was silent. Even Daniel, seated across from her, didn't look up. I forgive you, she said simply. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. The anger you left me with almost destroyed the art inside me. I won't let it take one more brushstroke. Her words echoed through the hall. When she stepped down, the sound of quiet applause rippled through the crowd. She didn't look back. She just walked toward the door, where Keanu waited. Outside, the city was drenched in sunlight. She closed her eyes and let it warm her face. You did it, Keanu said softly. She smiled. No, we did. I only found my strength again because you reminded me it was still there. He looked at her for a long moment, his gaze full of quiet pride. You didn't need reminding. You just needed someone to stand beside you while you remembered who you were. They walked together through the streets, past people who now whispered not rumors, but respect. Alexandra had become a symbol of resilience, an artist who had turned pain into purpose. Weeks passed. The noise faded. The headlines moved on. And life, slowly, began to breathe again. Keanu returned to filming, but every few days, he stopped by her studio. Sometimes they spoke for hours, sometimes not at all. Silence between them was never empty. It was peaceful, like music without sound. One evening, as she worked on a large new canvas, he entered quietly. The painting was unlike her earlier works, brighter, gentler, full of sunrise tones instead of storms. He watched her paint for a while, then asked softly, "What's this one called?" She paused, her brush hovering in the air. "Begin again," she said. He smiled faintly. "Fitting, you know," she said, glancing at him. "When I opened that door months ago and saw you standing there, I thought it was the worst night of my life. I didn't know it would lead to everything changing." He stepped closer, his voice low. "Sometimes the universe knocks gently. Sometimes it knocks loud enough to break the door down." She laughed softly. "And sometimes it sends a man standing in the rain." He smiled. "I'd stand in it again, every night, if it brought me here." Silence followed, the kind that says everything words can't. She put her brush down and faced him. "What happens now, Keanu?" He met her gaze, his voice quiet but certain. "We live quietly, we love loudly, and we never let the world steal our peace again." The final light of evening fell across them, painting their faces in gold. Weeks later, Alexandra's new exhibition opened in a small private gallery. No reporters, no flashing cameras, just art, warmth, and truth. Her collection, Begin Again, drew people who came not for gossip but for healing. Every canvas told a story of survival, rain turning to sunlight, broken glass turning into reflection, loneliness turning into connection. When the night ended, she and Keanu stood by her favorite piece, a painting of a door slightly open, with light spilling through the cracks. She smiled softly. "This one's called The Night He Came Back." He looked at it, then at her. "And what does it mean?" "It means," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "that love didn't rescue me. It reminded me I was worth rescuing." He reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining gently. "You always were." As they left the gallery hand in hand, the city lights shimmered around them. No storms, no fear, no headlines, just peace. The night air was soft, the streets quiet, and when they passed the place where everything had begun, the door she had once opened with trembling hands, she stopped, smiled, and whispered, "Thank you for coming back." Keanu smiled, his voice warm and steady. "I never really left." And under the soft glow of the streetlight, she finally believed him. Because sometimes, love doesn't arrive with grand promises or perfect timing. Sometimes, it simply stands in the rain and waits, patient, silent, unshakable, until the heart is ready to open the door again.